Welcome to the Ecom Collab Club podcast, where operators, risk takers, and battle-tested founders drop the lessons that cost them time, money, and their sanity, and share what actually works so you don't have to pay the same price. Hosted by Adam Pearce, co-founder of the Ecom Collab Club, and Blend Commerce, the Shopify CRO agency.
All right, Gareth Cummings, CEO of eDesk. What is on your mind on this rather, gloomy Monday afternoon, my side of water anyway?
Yeah, well, it's kind of gloomy here as well, but I guess in Ireland, you always have to be prepared for the weather, be it sunshine or rain, anything the same day, which is maybe not a bad analogy for e-commerce businesses, right? You always have to be prepared for whatever's going to hit you during the day, because that's just life when you're in e-commerce. I think things are ever changing. So yeah, maybe that's on my mind, right? Changing. There's a lot of discussion at the moment, everything from AI to tariffs to everything really, right? So there's a lot of change as always, maybe accelerate even more than ever, I think, these days.
No, definitely. And I think, look, AI, I definitely want to pick your brains on this later on, because look, we're talking obviously today, Gareth, about customer service, customer support rather. And one of the things I think that happens a lot on podcasts like this one and other events and things that I'm part of is everyone gets very giddy over ads, flashy apps, AI. And I think ultimately customer support, and like we said before we started going live at today, it is that important, but why are folks treating it just like it's a cost center? It's just something you have to pay for and get through. Yeah,
look, I mean, obviously here in eDesk, it's what we're so passionate about and what we believe in, but we believe in it for a reason, right? It's not, if you go back to first principles, right? Like your customer is the heart of your business. Look at Amazon, the biggest e-commerce giant, right? Their first leadership principle still is, customer obsession, right? So there's a reason for that, and the reason for that is that, well, first of all, customers are hard to acquire. They've always been hard to acquire, but it's even harder nowadays, right? You've got ad spend is going up. You've got AI in the mix, changing SEO and all that type of stuff. You've got, more competition. Everything goes, and there's so much focus on that, acquiring new customers, and there's less attention in terms of minding your existing customers that you have, right, and driving that repeat business. Like I often think of that kind of flywheel of success, right? You want to get a customer in the door and you want to convert, but you want them to have a good experience because you want them to be positive about your brand and your what you sell. So they leave, a positive review, which drives more business, right? So it's that kind of circle that you want to be doing, and you want to be, you want to be looking after the customers that you have already. They're hard earned and hard won, so don't neglect that part of your business, because I see it time and time again where it just happens time and time again because everyone's so focused on we need to acquire more customers, we need to hack growth, we need to do all these, things, right? Which they all have a place, but yeah. Customers are at the heart of your business, so make sure you're looking after them and treating them right.
Because I think this is a really interesting thing for me about, I think, e-commerce is that a lot of the time we are trying to emulate that experience that you get in an in-store environment, aren't we? And it's sometimes very hard to do certain things there. And I think the perspective of some people maybe that have an e-commerce business as well, ultimately, if the website is there, should that not be acting effectively as a way to get people through the experience anyway? So why should we then need customer support on top of that if the website is there purely to convert people?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I suppose sometimes I think of it a little bit this way because I can talk a little bit about different things in this space, but it's like having your shop open, right? But nobody there to service someone when they walk in, right? So, your website is your shop door. That's where people come and browse, but they also engage with you, right? Like there's still a trust element to when I buy something online, right? There's still a psychological element where you build up trust. And how do you build up trust, right? It's generally how you interact with a brand, right? And some of that part of that obviously is in terms of how you communicate with that brand. Now, communication can happen in lots, like these days, in lots of different ways, right? I might discover your brand on TikTok or Instagram or different mechanisms. I might see how you're communicating with people on those platforms. I might go to your website, engage on some chat. I might send you an email. Some websites still have contact forms on them, right? There's lots of different ways where I might engage with you as a brand. And part of that is me building up a little bit of trust or psychological trust with you in terms of how you respond and how you engage and how responsive you are. And like, we see that all the time in our data, right? In terms of, you know, brands or sellers who engage with customers quickly, right? So, you know, there's kind of like a 15-minute window or even less. If you engage within that window, if you engage with kind of correct answers, and this is, I'm talking a bit about pre-sales here, right? Before they purchase something on your website, right? So I'm asking questions about maybe your shipping times or, you know, deliveries, or I might be asking about sizes, or do you have something in stock, right? All those questions that you have before you're going to make a purchase. And especially now these days, I mean, talk about Gen Z, but also more broadly speaking, we're all on our phones 24/7. And, you know, so we expect that instant response. We expect that instant communication. So that's what you need to deliver, right? You need to kind of deliver that in terms of to your prospective consumers who are on your website, who are browsing. And you need to do that. That's what people expect, right? And again, we see that in our data. If you engage, if you speak to customers correctly and with the correct information, your conversion rates actually go up, right? Because you see a lot of frustration around certain things pre-purchase. And we see, you know, for some of our customers, you know, up to 50 or 60% of their communication can be pre-sales, right? Pre the transaction, right? Obviously, there's all the post-transaction stuff, which obviously is very important as well. But there's also that initial engagement with you as a brand or as a seller online, and how you react to that, right? And you know, those things happen in the evening times. They happen at weekends. You know, we as consumers are sitting at home, you know, looking stuff up either on our phones or on a laptop or whatever it may be. So it's important that you're there at those times as well, right? So you know, your website is your shop, and your shop is open 24/7. But you need to make sure your shop is staffed 24/7 as well, right? So that kind of mentality as well is kind of how we think about it, and also how we see, right? The data shows that out, right? It will help your conversion, right, in terms of when you engage properly on those different channels.
You know, it's interesting listening to you speak there as well, I think, because in that whole, the answer to your question there, you only actually mentioned one negative word. You said when customers are frustrated once. Everything else you said about was actually about being proactive and driving a sale. So, you know, my perception is of me when I talk to brands, you know, who in e-commerce, they look at customer service as a way of basically what you do when shit hits the fan is, I think, the way that most. So when they come and talk to you and you've got this language of like, you know, you're thinking about like a revenue function, is that difficult from sometimes to process and kind of go, oh, actually, God, that we need, there's probably a whole new world of customer support that they didn't think was there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I see it. And to be honest, I see it with a lot of successful brands. You see the leaders or organization treat it very important, and that way it gets treated within the organization with that importance, right? I mean, I was at NRF there in January and listened to, you know, the biggest brands in the world, and they're all talking about their customer trust, communication, how they engage, right? These are all the top brands. And the CEOs, owners of the business, this is what they're speaking about. Like, touch about AI in a second, right? But it's like AI everywhere at the moment, right? And AI plays its role, and don't like, I'm a technologist at heart, so don't get me wrong. But the brands that are being really successful are still talking about that connection, that communication, how they engage with their customers. So I think for me, it does need to come from the top, right? Because, and I get it, it's easy to be, you know, you're very busy, you're running day to day, you're naturally going to be lean towards, right, how can we acquire more customers, what we do marketing wise, how are we going to get conversion better on our website, which, like, they're all very valid things. Don't get me wrong, these are all very valid things in the business. But the thing that gets neglected then is that the thing that's at your heart of your business is customer support, and how you can use that as a revenue driver, how you can grow your business, and also how you can actually identify things in your business which sometimes don't come out. Like, your customer support team is speaking to your customers on a daily basis, right? By default, they're kind of problem solvers, right? That's the default behavior, which plays its role, obviously. But you got to think about the things that sometimes, and I see it again with our customers and stuff, and even in our data, because we surface some of this within eDesk, is sometimes you could have a product that's selling really well, but actually it's actually causing some problems. Like there's a high level of returns on it. Delivery rate is poor. Like quite often your support team will be aware of that, or that data is there in a platform, but you maybe as a in the growth side of the business is not quite aware of that because it's disconnected a little bit. You need to be aware of those things that are happening in your business as well, right? Because you might have this SKU that's selling really well, but actually it's hurting your business because you're getting a lot of returns which are costly. You might be getting some negative reviews. It's a bad experience, right, that someone's having with your product or your brand. These are all things. These are all things that you can start to harness and surface out of your customer support team and customer support engine within your business. So there's real opportunity in terms of driving growth, in terms of engagements, but there's also an opportunity to, understand why things are kind of going wrong within your business and correct them as well. And look, they all add to growth as well, right? If you have a product that's causing a high level of returns, and we all know margins are getting tighter and tighter, right, in terms of how you run your business. There's an area which you can focus on in terms of what products, what SKUs, what's driving, because it's not just support, right? That's customer frustrations that are coming in. So what's the root cause underneath them, and how can you kind of correct them in the business as well, right? So it's looking at that full life cycle of the customer experience really is really important.
I suppose also it's like, those products or that you're selling that do have more influence need from the CS teams, ultimately then the profitability that is impacted as well, then, because you need to account for additional time you're managing it. And I think what I was interested in as well, Gareth, is from a tactical level, or from I guess more grain level, is when customers asking questions all along kind of a buying journey, what sort of stage the questions influence buying the most at?
Yeah, absolutely. I was looking at some data there before. About 34% of what we see of our data, of what we call pre-sales questions, right, is around the checkout experience, or people getting frustrated. So you see this behavior still today when it's surprises at the checkout. So they get to the checkout and there's like an extra delivery charge, or there's something in there that was, that's a surprise. You never want to be surprised as a consumer, right? So you see a lot of questions around that area when people get to that point, and there's some questions around, be it a charge, or it could be around a delivery date, or quite often as well, you'd be surprised how many times it still happens where people get to the end of a checkout experience and actually turns out the product's out of stock. Now, some of those are bigger things, right? They're not just customers, they're bigger platform things. But you will see this data be surfaced in pre-sales types queries, right? Because they will come in and ask that question. Now, there's still opportunities if you answer them quickly, and quickly is very, very important. Obviously, if you're at that stage as a consumer and you're at the kind of checkout page, it's minutes you're going to give someone to get back to you, right? It's a short window. So that's really, really important. But if you do that and you can answer some of those questions, obviously you help with conversion to sale. And again, we see that all the time. But also, if you're tracking that data correctly, you're identifying things which are going wrong in that process, right? It's like, oh, there's things here at our checkout page which are causing friction. And sometimes that isn't always captured through analytics or different tools, right? Sometimes it's your customer support team who can give you that feedback back, right? So I think that's where we see a lot of room for optimization. And yeah, I mean, also the other flip side of that as well, the more questions you can answer pre-purchase, it actually has a correlation to lesser returns. So I as a consumer know that, I'm asking questions about sizes, about the product itself. If I can get those answered before I make the purchase, right? Again, you want to be, returns are still a pain point in a lot of business these days. So if you can get that information up front and answered up front and accurately, that's very important as well, right? Then you actually have it's a direct correlation to lowering your returns on those products. So that's a very powerful compounding effect in your business, right? Because that helps your business a lot, right? So there are these types of areas and these types of things that we see, and again, these in our data across our customer base time and time again. And when some focus is put on there, it can really move the needle in terms of some pretty significant metrics. And again, also help in terms of your profitability, right? Because you can have less returns, you can have more return customers, right? So less acquisition costs. Things like we would track in our platform or stuff like obvious things like LTV in customers and VIP customers. So like when you have a VIP customer coming in who buys off you all the time, they should be treated accordingly, right? In terms, you want to make sure your support team is enabled for that, because they're the customers you want to make sure you're focused on. They're the ones who are not only buying off you time and time again. They're the ones who, both online but also offline, because we all still speak to our family, our friends, our neighbors, or co-workers, right? So they're the ones you want to make sure that they continue to have that really good level of experience from your customer support team, because they're your advocates. They're the ones buying off you, speaking about you. And just look, it's quite obvious stuff in some ways, but like you'd be surprised how much it gets neglected in businesses. And look, again, I get it. It's because people are so busy, and just, again, there's so much focus on, how many sales have we got in today, and many new customers, and many people are coming to the website, what's our convert, just so much focus on that, and I get it. But yeah, it's just there's actually a lot of sometimes easy wins if you just put a little bit of focus, a little bit of effort.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's interesting. I think other people think about this is that I feel like in e-commerce there is a hell of a lot of free information that you can get hold of that is actually massively powerful. And I think, look, you can use, I think eDesk in different levels in terms of how much you embed it within your organization or not, depending on how big or small you are. But ultimately, if you have a feature there that allows people to communicate with you, you're going to get a lot of information that you can do something about and do something with. And obviously, you mentioned there, obviously, some specific questions. I suppose what I'm interested in as well here is on the flip side, because as you know, I'm involved with conversion rate and that kind of thing. Are there probably two things to ask here? Are there any questions that tend to correlate with a higher conversion? And this might sound a bit warped, but do you think in a way sometimes by not having all the answers on the site to then make sure that people do ask questions if you have that feature there, that could actually land you in a better spot? So double-edged question there, I suppose.
Yeah, I'll maybe start with the second piece. Absolutely. I go back to what I was saying earlier on, right? Trust is still a thing. When I come to your website for the first time and I'm browsing your products, you want to get that sense, like I want to engage with you and get a sense that you're responsive and that you're there, right? Now, look, obviously it's different for different brands and different scale of things and stuff like that. But if I'm coming to your website for the first time and I'm making a purchase and I haven't bought off you before, right? That engagement is really, really important to me as a consumer. There's still a trust thing there that you start to build up. So that's why it's important to allow people to, like, sometimes it's still a bit of an old school mentality. I still see it. I'd be surprised that like some websites still have like, oh, you have to do a contact form, and this kind of archaic, like it's like, oh, we don't want people to engage with us, so we'll make it as difficult as possible. But if you just think about that,
expect a response within 3 working days, like what?
Well, but if you just think about that, right? It's like someone wants to speak to you, right? A potential customer or a customer wants to speak to you, and you're like, oh, let's put up all these barriers, right? So you don't speak to it. Like it's just not not the right way approach, right? And the reason for that is because if we go back to the original thing, it like in a lot of business still today, it's seen as a cost center. It's like, so what do you do with a cost center? You're like, well, how do you reduce costs? Well, let's try and reduce the amount of people who engage with us. But like, it's complete opposite. If you're an e-commerce brand or seller, you want people engaging with you. You want people engaging with your brand. You want people to have a positive experience with that. So you should make it easy to chat with you on your website. You should make it easy to engage with your support team. You should make it responsive and quick. It's not, if I'm sitting at home and I might be I just might have a moment where, I'm kind of interested in this. Like the moment is there, right? So your potential customer is there, right? If you take 2 or 3 days to respond back to them, it's like, I'm gone, right? I've bounced, right? So I think make it easy, right? Allow people to engage with your brand, and then make sure you're responding quickly and accurately, right? And then to your first question in terms of what type of questions that we see, like again, I come back to sometimes it's around the assurances. It's like, can I return this product? What your delivery is, there delivery charges, those types of things, right? If you can get answer them, and then again, if you think about it as a business, that data is fairly like you have that at hand, right? So in terms of, we talk a little bit about AI and stuff, but that data is there. Like you can easily put that into AI or into different things, and it can surface that back up, right? And it's accurate and it's quick and responsive. So those type of questions come up time and time again, and if you can enable them. Again, we see it time and time again. The conversion rates just go up. There's a trust thing there, and it helps your business.
As time goes on, while we're chatting years ago, I think one of the things that's striking me is that my experience with a lot of e-com brands is that the data that you would get from on-site chat and these questions being asked very rarely is either going back to the marketing team or the person responsible for marketing, or is indeed probably owned by them. I mean, look, how many brands are you with, anecdotally, I guess, I'm not thinking figures, but anecdotally, like, genuinely, does marketing own that information? And secondly, what I wanted to ask you is why, if not, are they not doing that, do you think?
Yeah, I still see a big disconnect there in businesses today, still, right? Quite often the support team is kind of isolated a little bit from the core business, so that feedback loop is not happening, right? So it's not going back to marketing, or even the buyers or the product teams say, hey, look, these types of things are happening. And like you would think in 2026 that stuff is just, but it's not, right? That feedback, and again, I think part of it comes back to a little bit in terms of leadership. Does the leadership in the organization treat this as important? Are they directing to make sure that those feedback loops are happening? Are they making sure that, because if that's not happening, again, marketing like can be working in their own silo in terms of what they're focused on, and that can happen in businesses, right? So it's, for me, the business I see who do this successfully are the ones who have strong, who leaders who care about this and make sure that actually, look, the customer's at the heart of this business, right? So we need to make sure that this has been coordinated throughout the business, so that marketing are aware, the buying teams are aware, everyone's aware in terms of what's actually going on day to day with our customers, right? That's really important. And once that ethos or that kind of driving force is there, then you can, then obviously, I'll give a plug for eDesk obviously yourself, but then you can look at the platforms and how you put that data together and how you kind of make sure that feedback loop is there. But it needs to come from the organization. It's really, really important, because it doesn't happen naturally. I still don't see it happening naturally unless it kind of comes from the top a little bit.
No, definitely. And I think what I would say is, like, the way I would describe it is in terms of, back of the fag packet kind of time. If you were saying, look, someone's using eDesk, obviously from the CS perspective, how in terms of you've got the feature then to be able to then communicate and answer those questions on site, where are, I guess, the main 3 or 4 offshoots of data should that be going to the different people within an organization? Just again, like sort of back of the fag packet kind of high level point of view. Yeah,
sorry, if I don't understand your question correctly, where that data should be pushed in the organization, is that kind of what?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, again, I kind of repeat some of what I said earlier on, but the first thing is in terms of your senior management or leadership team in the organization need to be seeing that data on a daily or weekly basis, right? In terms of what's going on, right? There's probably 5 or 6 kind of key metrics that you want to be tracking, right? In terms of coming through, and typically we break them down into what I would say pre-sales questions and post-sales, right? Because they're 2 different kind of animals in terms of what's going on there, and even want to see trends there because they can indicate what things are going on. So there's 5 or 7 kind of key KPIs that you want to be surfaced that your management team or leadership team should be looking at and seeing on a consistent basis, right? And you should know, your acceptable ranges in those KPIs, because once that, it's a cliche, right? But anything that gets measured gets managed, right? But it's true, right? So you have to surface it first, and once it's surfaced and people are aware of it and it's visible, then all of a sudden that just starts enforcing it in the organization. Because when you see something, when there's something red, right, on a number, it's like, well, what's going on there, right? And that's an immediate impact to the organization, right? And then when you go down, and it could be marketing, or it could be your purchasing or product, or it could be your fulfillment center, or it could be lots of different areas where that might surface, but it's having those metrics visible at a top line, right? I think that's really, really important, right? And having those metrics drive behavior in the organization. So I think that's key.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that drives me mad when I get on calls with brands is that the amount of times I ask and I say, what is the profit target for the next 12 months? Or what is revenue target for the next 12 months? And the answer usually is, we just want to see some growth. And I think ultimately we need to get better in e-commerce. I think all of us have talking more in sort of, absolute terms of what we need to get to. And I suppose it's the same here, isn't it? You know, because it's like you mentioned earlier on about sort of the speed of response. I suppose, look, you probably will have seen, like, you know, the sort of faster the response, there's sort of, you know, the impact of revenue. Is there, if you like double response speed, are there any stats there to kind of say what general impact that has on revenue?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, in terms of pre-sales queries, right? So there is a kind of bar within, we say below 15 minutes, right? Now, again, the quicker you can get, the better, right? But below 15 minutes is quite material. Now, again, 15 minutes might we'd have companies who onboard eDesk and it's days, right, to respond to honestly, it's days to respond to pre-sales questions, right? So it's like, the aim initially is to get that down in 15 minutes. We've seen conversion impacts. So we track pre-sales questions when they're answered within 15 minutes, how many times an order comes off the back of that, right? And we have pre and post that. So you could be using eDesk and then not using eDesk and then post that in terms of tracking your pre-sales and answers. And we see like a 50-60% lift in orders attached to those pre-sales questions, right? So, it's significant. It's not a small amount, right? We see a huge lift in terms of orders that are attached after those pre-sales questions are answered. Because, and again, in particular for brands who are less established, right? Like, I mean, obviously if you're going to a bigger brand and stuff like that, who has a name and you know about and you've purchased off before, that's sometimes slightly different. But again, for first-time customers who are coming to your website, who have questions about your deliveries, your process in terms of, again, some basic things that is in stock, what sizes come in, et cetera, when you answer those quickly, it has a huge impact in terms of conversion, what we've seen. We've seen some of our customers within weeks, like generating, significant figures in terms of kind of significant 5-figure sums off the back of just in terms of answering that, right? So that's pretty cool to see. When you see that impact, that's pretty cool to see, in terms of
no, absolutely. So I suppose on that note is that, from a kind of a scaling point of view, I think people look, when they look at an e-commerce brand, we had a lot of brands who came to us as an agency, sort of after COVID. They had, increased their sales by 300-400%. And, you see it obviously less frequent now, that level of growth in such a period of time, but it was that inflection point where you go, Christ, what do I actually need now when it comes to my site now we've got bigger? When you obviously have brands that are scaling upwards, what tends to break around customer service and customer support first? And I guess the question I'm asking is, like, how do you know when you need something like eDesk then to come in and basically help start, sort of being part of that growth that you're going on?
Yeah, I think what we constantly is just it becomes too chaotic. Like they're trying to manage across multiple different, because again, conversations and stuff come in lots of different channels these days, right? So obviously the different channels you sell on. So obviously you could be selling on your own website, but also you'll have marketplaces these days, even like the stuff like TikTok Shop, and there's a lot of different channels where you're selling on, and then all those channels have communication coming in through different channels. So I think typically what we see is that it becomes, there isn't a good sense that it's being managed well. They're struggling to get on top of in terms of are we meeting our SLAs? What are our metrics like? It seems like way too much effort in terms of what it should be. So it's just a little bit unstructured, a little bit too chaotic. Sometimes they're using different platforms or different systems, logging in different places. Obviously, I'll give a plug for eDesk, but that's what we're all about. We'll connect to anywhere you sell, be it marketplaces or social channels or your web store. We'll connect all that stuff into a single inbox, into a single place, and kind of calm the chaos, I guess, in terms of, and then it gives you visibility, right? So first of all, it's just consolidation, allow you, and then all of a sudden, then you can start to surface these things we were speaking about earlier on in terms of, oh, hey, hang on a minute, we could do better in terms of our conversion rate and pre-sales if we start to give some content and some answers that can be answered quickly. You should plug in chat on our website. We're having some problems with this particular product or SKU. We're getting negative reviews for this, for whatever reason. So all of a sudden you can start to surface these things and get on top of them. And that just leads to better customer experience, but also in terms of just better, less firefighting, and managing. Because ultimately what you want to do is, I believe AI plays a role, obviously, right? You want to use AI to automate repetitive queries, where's my order? I need an invoice. Pre-sales questions are perfect for that, right? Because you can answer a lot of those questions. And that leaves your customer support team then more time to be treating VIP customers, to be surfacing stuff back to the business, to be handling more complex issues, right? That's, the role of your customer service team that can actually focus more on customers, right? And that's what you want them, right? You want them focused there, and then have the repetitive stuff automated, and all of a sudden that gives you twofold, right? It kind of lessens the noise or the kind of reaction you need from your support team, but allows them to focus then on more higher value, higher task items, which ultimately then starts to drive up your revenue and improving that kind of flywheel in terms of your customers coming back and buying off you again.
Yes, and I mean, look, I'm glad you mentioned that actually as well, about the fact that you guys obviously put across different platforms, because, again, sort of like we were saying before, quite a few of our clients, particularly the US ones, they're on, sort of 7 or 8 of the marketplaces as well. So to have something, because again, look, this a lot better than I do, is that customers will bounce around different marketplaces and different channels to buy from the same customer, because they'll be trying to get different deals and different specific products. One thing I was interested when you talking about earlier about the different channels there is, for the same company, do you tend to observe that there are then different questions relating to the platform, even though it's the same product or same company? Because I was just interested in that, because obviously from my point of view, thinking about the site experience, does that then dictate the questions that they're asking?
Yeah, no, it really does actually. You'll see a different type of query coming in on marketplaces, for Amazon or Walmart or eBay in the US in particular, right? You'll see a different type of query coming in and that, as opposed to when someone lands on your website. So that's where you get, and again, it depends on your website and how you surface some of that data as well, right? In terms of if you have some of that stuff, some people will have an FAQ, and so some people will go there. So there's different variations that you see across the different. Again, what we're seeing on social channels in particular, though, is it's a much more casual type of engagement, if that makes sense. So when someone's on TikTok or Instagram, which you would expect, but it's a much more, they expect that kind of conversation, and they're asking different questions a little bit, whereas when it's marketplace, it tends to be a little bit more transaction orientated in terms of pre-sales questions. So you see that variation across those different channels. But again, that's from the start, eDesk has always been kind of built with, because e-commerce is changing, ever changing, right? There's always more places to sell, there's always more channels, and yeah, exactly. We all do it as consumers, right? You might go to a website and you're like, actually, I might just check and see if I can get that cheaper on. You want the product, right? You go, I'll go check Amazon or whatever, right? We all do it, right? So they will bounce around, right? They will might discover you one place, but actually buy off you in a different place, right? But at the same time, they're kind of expecting that consistent interaction with you, right? Because I don't care if I'm a consumer, right? I don't care if I'm on asking a question on TikTok one day and then I'm bouncing over here the next day. I kind of expect the same level of engagement, and I expect the same responsiveness, right? So I think that's, we're seeing that more and more. There's just ever growing, I guess, fragmentation in terms of where people are selling across.
Definitely. And I mean, look, we can't do a podcast in 2026 without mentioning the words AI, or the phrase AI. And you mentioned it earlier on. I think my specific question to you on this is, because look, obviously I appreciate that, look, AI can be used a lot within your world, but the question is, being, real crux of the situation at the moment is, where is it actually useful right now, and where is it frankly downright dangerous? Yeah.
But the first thing, it's not like you see a lot, right? But it's not a panacea, right? You can't just slap AI on a business and it doesn't work like that, right? It obviously it's extremely useful, right, in terms of being able to use in your business, but you still have to work with it. You still have to, in any aspect of your business you're going to introduce in, right? You still, you can't just magically put it in and it's going to fix everything, right? You have to have data, right? The expressions we talk about is you can't AI data that you don't have, right? So you need, first of all, you need to be learning on systems and data that you have and is connected up. The second thing is AI needs instructions. It needs to be guided. It needs to be trained. It needs to be worked, right? And for you to do that, you need to have processes. You need to have things mapped out. You'd be surprised really when you sometimes poke around a business that it's just, people know that's how things are done, but it's not documented or it's not written anywhere, right? It's just this kind of tribal knowledge, right, that is organically there. AI can't tap into tribal knowledge, right? It's not there yet, right? Where it's tapping into our brains, maybe in 5 years or 10 years, but it's not there yet, right? So you still need to instruct it. You still need to train it. You still need to work with it, right? It's not, you think of it as, sometimes we try and describe it as it's still like hiring onboarding someone in your team. You need to train them. You need to guide them. You need to work with them every day. Now, obviously, the advantage of AI, it never gets sick. It runs 24/7. All the other things all the other benefits that gives you, but still, you need to, and it's still so early. I mean, I saw something the other day where a stat which kind of only something like, I don't know, 16% of the world's population has used ChatGPT. Now, you hear so much about it, you think, and it was even how many actually had to use it for, I think it was an e-commerce purchase. I mean, it was tiny. It was like, you would think the whole world is just transformed, like with everything you read about. But we're still very early stages. But yeah, look, you still need to have, you can learn it. It can be extremely useful, obviously, but you need to learn it on systems that work. You need to have it in places. Like support is an obvious area, right? In e-commerce in particular, because you do get a lot of repetitive queries, right? Probably, if I think about maybe 70% of support queries are probably in 10 categories, right? Where's my order? I need the invoice. I want to return this. That's just categories, in particular in e-commerce, just categories there in customer support which are repetitive. Absolutely makes sense to automate that. Absolutely makes sense, because again, once you've automation in place, it's 24/7, responds within seconds or minutes. It's if you have multilingual customers, you can handle 165 languages, multilingual capability. All those things make sense to do, and again, that allows you then to focus as I was saying earlier on, your customer support team on what they should be focused on: VIP customers, dealing with more difficult issues, ensuring there's a really good level of service. People still want to have that interaction with humans as well, right? So there's a balance, but automating those repetitive queries, yes, absolutely. But that takes work, because even with eDesk, you still have to have the content and you plug it into feeds, and so you still need to make sure that work is done. But once it's done, it's it will work in terms of handling those repetitive queries. So yeah, I think that's where you see value. But yeah, it's not, it's not, you can't just slap it in any part of your business and expect it just to transform overnight,
when you were saying a moment ago about the fact, look, ultimately you need those processes in place, and you're factoring kind of these rules that it needs to abide by. Is that something that you as a team will help brands with, or is that something that they kind of need to kind of come to you with, and then you'll provide the tech? Like how does the relationship work with your clients that you've got?
Yeah, absolutely. No, we absolutely work with our brands to help them do that, because I mean, this is new for everyone, right? In terms of so they're still getting used to this. Obviously, we've built the product in a way that you can self-service, and we have some customers who just come in and self-service and off they go, and they're happy to do it themselves. And we always build the product with that in mind, so we allow people to do it themselves. But absolutely, we work with some of our biggest customers in terms of, and again, how they can improve, because sometimes they don't have the policy. Like, it's interesting to see when you start automating things to realize actually, oh, we don't actually have a policy around that. Like to see, so for example, we'd have a gaps report in the product, and it would show you why the AI couldn't answer. It'd be like, these gaps, right? It's like, you don't have a policy for this, or you don't. And so, it's surprising to us that often businesses go, oh, actually, we don't have a policy in that. It's just, so it's like, oh, okay, so we need to produce, so that's where we can work with our customers. We surface those things in the product, and they can work through them and go, oh, maybe we need a policy, or maybe we need instructions, or, maybe we need to, like, even refunds is an interesting one. It's like, well, we might be comfortable with allowing AI to refunds up to a certain dollar amount, right? But above that, it has to go. Or there's other things that you might go, if it's a VIP customer, because we would tag that in our platform as well, and they're looking for a refund, it's automatic, right? Don't question. VIP customer, VIP in our language is someone who's, Pearce repeat times, has LTV value of a certain amount. These are trustworthy customers and stuff like that. So don't put any obstacle in the way there. Just handle it. Get beyond the initial setup. You can start working through some of these cases and start to do smarter things when you start to see some of these gaps and things being surfaced, right? Because you can, and again, you foot the important thing, again, not just with eDesk, but any platform is like this with AI, is that you have full control over that. So you can determine what rules you're comfortable with, how you converse with customers, what instructions you want to your brand. So that's, those guardrails or parameters are completely within your control, because every brand's a little bit unique or different in terms of how they want to do things as well.
I mean, look, on that brand level, look, the brands listen to this podcast as well, to honest with you, Gareth, they tend to be sort of doing somewhere between sort of 3 and 10 million pounds a year. That's kind of the research that we've done. And what I was going to say is, like, if they're listening to this and thinking about CS, first thing tomorrow morning, what should they be doing if they're thinking about, saying, turning this on as a revenue driver?
Yeah, first thing they should do is speak to their support team first thing in the morning, and ask them how things are going, what's working, what's not, what feedback they're getting. Right, I think that's the first thing, is just see what's going on in terms of the support team, right? Because again, often that's been, that's running in a corner somewhere and stuff, and we don't worry about that. But it's like, okay, what's going on in that, right? That's the first thing, right? And then just surface, right? Okay, let's see what else we can do here to drive, or even, it's even a basic thing. Are we getting back to our pre-sales questions? So again, you'd be surprised how many times I see brands of decent scale and size, as you say, could be doing 5 million a year, whatever. And you look at it and you're going, you're leaving a whole load of pre-sales questions which are never answered. Never mind days, they never got a response, right? So even some very basic things like that is a very easy area to look at and go, actually, are we answering our questions that are coming in? Like, are they all being answered, right? You'd be surprised at the times, like, actually they're not. Okay, maybe we should prioritize that. Maybe that should be an area in the business we're going to put a bit of focus on. Put some focus on that for a week and see does it uplift in terms of sales. I'd be extremely confident you will see an uptick in sales, right, if you put a bit of focus on that. And that's a very simple thing to do, right? And that's something that's within pretty much any business in that space of size, you say, right? That's a pretty easy thing for them to do, pretty immediate, and you can track it quite easily. Put focus on pre-sales. Are they being answered? Did we see an uptick in sales? Yes. Well, let's go. Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Well, look, Gareth, thank you so much for coming on the podcast with us today. And if obviously people want to get in touch, find out more, what should they do? Where should they go?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a nice, easy name, eDesk.com. So if you head to the website, you can see everything we do and what we're about. And obviously you can engage with us or book a demo or engage with our chat, because we're very, obviously, we treat customer support very, very, very as a number one priority in our business, So yeah, www.edesk.com. Come along and get in touch.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on with us, Gareth. And guys, thank you very much for tuning in. If you have liked what you listened to today, do give us a like or a follow on the listen platform of your choice. We'll be here again same time next week with the eCom Collab Club podcast. Cheers.
That's great. Thanks, Al.
Thanks for listening to the eCom Collab Club podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and join our community at ecomcollabclub.com/community.